Welcome back to The Whole Story, the podcast where we are journeying through the foundational texts of Scripture. I'm Marcus.
And I'm Daniel. Last time we covered the epic story of Noah and the flood. The world was given a reset, but as we saw with Noah's own failure in the vineyard, the core problem, the human heart, wasn't solved.
That's exactly right. God established a covenant of grace, symbolized by the rainbow, promising never to destroy the world by water again. But humanity now has a second chance. And the question that hangs over Genesis chapters 10 and 11 is, what will they do with it?
Right. So we start with chapter 10, which is known as the Table of Nations. It's another one of those genealogies.
It is, but it's a fascinating one. It shows the fulfillment of God's command for Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, to be fruitful and fill the earth. It's essentially an ancient map tracing the origins of the different peoples and nations, and it introduces a very important figure, Nimrod. Yes, he's described as a mighty hunter before the Lord and a kingdom builder, and the text specifically says the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. This name drop is a crucial piece of foreshadowing, setting the stage for the main event in chapter 11.
The Tower of Babel. This story is so famous, it's become a part of our language.
It has. The chapter opens with this unified humanity. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. They migrate together and settle on a plain in the land of Shinar, which is Mesopotamia.
And on the surface, that unity sounds like a good thing.
It does. But their unity is directed to a deeply rebellious project. They say to one another, "Come, let us," a phrase that often signals humans trying to usurp God's role, and they lay out their plan.
So let's break that plan down. What was their goal?
It had three parts, each one dripping with rebellion. First, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. This is likely referring to a ziggurat, a massive temple tower common in ancient Mesopotamia, which they believed was a gateway to the divine. It's an attempt to access God on their own terms, through their own technology.
So it's about control and religious pride. What's the second part?
Let us make a name for ourselves. This is the core motive. They're seeking fame, glory, and significance apart from their Creator. Their identity and security are rooted in their own grand achievement, not in their relationship with their Creator.
And the final part of their plan reveals the third rebellion.
Exactly. They want to do all this lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. This is in direct disobedience to God's primary command after the flood: be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. They're choosing to huddle together to consolidate their power rather than to trust God and spread out as He commanded.
So this whole project is a trifecta of pride, self-glorification, and disobedience. How does God respond?
The author includes this wonderfully ironic line, "And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower."
He had to come down to see the tower they were building to reach up to him. And that really puts their grand achievement in perspective. From a divine point of view, it's insignificant.
It's a subtle but devastating critique. God sees their unified rebellion and knows that if left unchecked, nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. So He acts. He says, echoing their words, "Come, let us go down," and there confuse their language.
So the judgment isn't destruction like the flood.
It's confusion and scattering. Exactly. And here's the brilliant part. The judgment is actually the fulfillment of His original command. He scatters them over the face of all the earth, forcing them to do what they refuse to do. Their project is abandoned, and their unity is broken. And that's where the city gets its name. Yes, it's a great piece of Hebrew wordplay. To them, the name Babel, or Babylon, likely meant gate of the gods, but in Hebrew, the verb balal means to confuse. So the city where they tried to make a great name for themselves becomes forever known by a name that means confusion. Their legacy is the opposite of what they intended.
So Babel really becomes this symbol, this archetype for all human projects that try to build a paradise on earth without God.
Precisely. It represents humanity's recurring attempt at self-salvation through unified power, technology, and politics. And the story shows it always ends in confusion and division.
So, after the story of humanity being scattered, where does the narrative go?
The camera's focus narrows dramatically. After painting this broad picture of scattered nations, the author zooms in on one single line of family from the Table of Nations, the line of Shem. We get another genealogy.
And this genealogy seems to be taking us to a very specific destination.
It is. It traces the line of promise down 10 generations, and it ends with a man named Terah and his son Abram. And here, the story seems to hit a wall. Terah starts a journey from Ur of the Chaldees toward the land of Canaan, but he stalls out. He settles in a place called Haran and dies there.
So, the journey of hope just stops halfway?
It does. And to make matters worse, the author adds a critical detail. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, was barren. She had no child. So the line of promise has reached a dead end, a stalled journey and a barren womb.
That's such a bleak place to end the chapter. It feels like complete human failure.
And that's the point. This is the perfect end to the first major section of Genesis. Chapters 1 through 11 have served as the Bible's prologue. They've given us the diagnosis of the human condition: a good world created by God, humanity's fall into sin, the spiral of corruption and violence, and finally, humanity's repeated failed attempts at self-rescue, culminating in the confusion of Babel.
So we're left at a point of helplessness. The problem has been thoroughly diagnosed, but there's no human solution in sight.
Precisely. The story has to bring us to this dead end to show us that the solution cannot come from us. It has to come from God. This hopeless situation, a stalled journey and a barren womb, is the necessary backdrop for God to launch his new, unexpected rescue plan for the world. Join us next time as we begin a new chapter in the story, Genesis 12 and the Call of Abram. God's rescue plan finally takes shape.